Okay, guys, I wanted to go over the 5 stages of knowing thyself, or in other words, self-discovery. Knowing thyself actually came from the temple at Apollo with the Greeks. And what it meant was that you had to go within yourself to be able to know thyself, or in other words, going the journey of self-discovery. And Carl Jung talked all about being able to own your wholeness was a process of self-discovery. Because it's like, if I've never discovered myself, how could I know myself? And that requires experience in going through things. So, in other words, I outlined 5 stages of this process. Stage 1 is awareness, stage 2 is the awakening, and then, stage 3 is the IQ and the EQ. So the IQ is that now I have to go pick up all the science, the data, the research of how this thing that I've become awakened to and I'm now aware of functions accurately. And then the EQ is your emotional quotient. So do I have the emotional intelligence to be able to connect with the work that's required, right, from the data and the research. And then you begin the work. So the more IQ and EQ that you can have, the easier that the work becomes. The work is this is a really challenging part because it's a way of being, not a thing of doing. And we'll talk more about that. And that leads us to embodiment. And embodiment means, and this is why I broke it down, M meaning within, body, within the body, ment meaning mind. Within the body and the mind, I am aligned. And that's wisdom. So here's other words that align with this process right here. Knowledge and understanding and wisdom. So here's the more important part is, first off, in the Western world, we love to look at things linearly, like do step 1, do step 2, do step 3, and then you'll get it all. However, that's not actually how life works. How life works is all of it is happening. Some things I'm really naturally gifted at, so I've embodied this and this, or that and the other thing. And then some of the other things I really struggle with. So it's kind of all happening simultaneously, but none of it can really start to take flight, if you will, until I am aware and begin to awaken, as they say. So the power of presence in awareness, meaning the power of being in the now. And Eckhart Tolle wrote a whole book about that. So if you really want to understand that bullet point, you got to go read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. We've talked about it a little bit, where the pain of my past causes me to ruminate on the past and pull my focus and my attention from the moment, like right now. And when I have done that, I weaken my power in the now. Also, the pain of the past will cause me to trip on the anxiety of the future, because if the pain of the past has no purpose, then I will have anxiety about the future because I don't want to repeat that pain because it has no purpose. And if it has no purpose, then that is an indicator that I have no idea how that pain showed up in my life. And if I have no idea how it showed up in my life, then I definitely feel a victim to the pain. And if I feel a victim, well, then I was attacked and I didn't have any power, and therefore I extend the rest of my power out to the future. And that's essentially the anxiety that comes. So yeah, the next thing is our emotional wounds. Remember, wounds means trauma. And wounding means that it's something that has distracted me and pulled me away from my innate wholeness that I was born with. Remember, when we're little babies, we are not born asking the world, am I enough? Am I smart enough? Am I pretty enough? In the world, when we are born, we just have this innate knowing. And the thing is that our brain is in the theta state till we're about 7 or 8 years old. And so the things that happen to us, we take as gospel truth. And often we make up a story that our parents or our caregivers never meant to give us, and sometimes they did, because it's just such a damn dysfunctional society or environment that we're living in. And so it creates emotional wounding. In other words, it traumatically pulls us from our innate wholeness. So we have to become aware of the fact that we have these emotional woundings, or in other words, we're just naturally traumatized because of the theta state and the experiences that we have, where, well, there's a whole lot that goes into that. So we're going to go through that. And that leads us to our core beliefs. From the traumas creates core beliefs. So I've got to be able to start identifying core beliefs. Now, core beliefs are not good nor bad. They're just our core beliefs. So we have core wounded beliefs and we have core whole beliefs. And the other thing that we have to become aware of is the innate wholeness that we all have. And the best way to understand that is that we are spiritual beings learning how to, or practicing how to be human, not human beings trying to practice how to be spiritual. The awakening process is that we are conscious creators. So if I know that I'm whole and I have these core wounded beliefs, and that's pulling me away from the power of now, well, then the results that I'm getting, and probably maybe I don't like them, so I can start becoming aware of where this is creating the results that I would like to have different. So I'm actually not a victim, I'm a conscious creator. So there's a whole process of being able to now bridge that gap to being a conscious creator. So as those questions come up, we'll go through those. And then this creates trauma bonds. And if you go to page 124 in the workbook, you'll see the explanation that I have on the relationship of trauma bonds. And then there's the wounded story. So if I have emotional wounds, I then create a story about myself, and it's a wounded story that feels real because I have lost my understanding of my innate wholeness. And so now I have these stories about myself, and these reside down in the subconscious where core beliefs live. And at that subconscious, now I have these beliefs that have to be played out, because beliefs need one thing: they need to be proven true, otherwise we wouldn't believe it. So then I have to create these patterns in my life. Well, I'm going to create patterns in my life that are probably not giving me results, and they keep repeating, and I don't want these results. So they're giving me these unfavorable results, and I feel a victim to it because I don't know how this is actually related to the core wounded beliefs that I have. And then we have to start to awaken to everything is connected. That there is, that the belief that we are separate is an illusion. So, in other words, I'll give you an example. If you repress your emotions, you're repressing your immune system. So, autoimmune diseases are directly connected to emotions and emotional wounds. And we have to start to see that everything is connected. Now we got to dive in and understand and ask all the questions about everything and obtain the knowledge from what I'm now awakening to and becoming aware of. So there's a book called The Biology of Belief. It is the science of epigenetics. And what it means is that my beliefs are what's driving the patterns in my life and the behaviors in my life. It's written by Bruce Lipton. Highly, highly recommend it. In fact, I do think it is a must read. And then we have to start understanding emotional IQ, in other words, EQ. And what are the intelligence of our emotions and how they create emotional connections, and how the emotions are tapped into the nervous system and the endocrine system, and the prefrontal cortex is how we tell the story about things that happen. As humans, we have a prefrontal cortex. It's also known as a storyteller, and as the storyteller, it has to tell a story. I have to figure it out. So give you an example, your prefrontal cortex consumes about 20%, sometimes some of the data is shown about 24 to 25% of your daily calories. Your prefrontal cortex is your figure it out part of your brain. You have to make it make sense, and you don't have all the data and you don't have all the proper understanding of what's really going on, and so we've got to figure it out. They hooked up technology to a bunch of Grand Chess Masters, and they found that the Grand Chess Masters were often burning 7,000 to 8,000 calories per match. So your brain has got to figure it out, and the way it figures it out is it tells a story. Now that story might be a wounded story, and that story might be the whole story, which is a love story, because everything is actually connected. And when we start understanding this process, we stop asking what's wrong with me and we start asking what happened to me. We start being compassionately inquisitive about what happened to you rather than the judgmental question of what's wrong with you. So there's actually a fantastic book by Dr. Bruce Perry. He co-authored it with Oprah. And the book is called What's Wrong with You? And, the book is called What Happened to You? And it's helping you rewrite the way we see things. Instead of saying what's wrong with you, we say what happened to you. And it's another must-read book. So there's 3 must-read books there. There's The Power of Now, there's The Biology of Belief, and then in the prefrontal cortex, understanding how to tell the story, it is What Happened to You by Bruce Perry. So then that comes to an understanding. We convert knowledge into understanding, and understanding comes from doing the work. And the shadow work, this is a Carl Jung idea. He's the grandfather of modern day psychology. However, I think most psychology has stepped away from his work, but him and Freud were like who it started from. And anyway, shadow work shadow are the parts of yourself that you reject and do not like, which came from the experiences when you were a young child and you learned to not accept those parts, or you came to believe that those parts were not good. And so it's about bringing the shadow beliefs that we have to the conscious mind. So we're going to take that which is hidden in the shadows and bring it to light, and then ask the question, what happened to you, so that we can then have compassionate inquiry and be able to connect everything back with empathy. So I have down here in this little quote, whatever we fight about on the outside world is also a battle in our inner selves. Anyone who can admit this will first seek the solution in himself or herself, and this, in fact, is the way all the great solutions begin. That's Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 18. So that's where the work is a compassionate inquiry, and of course, like getting the IQ about what's going on, and then we start to put everything into context, and we start to look at the nuances of things like, oh, of course you did that. And once we start understanding, or of course I did that, once I start any of my understanding with, of course, it's because I have begun to get empathy. So empathy work really begins with everyone is doing the very best they know how to do, the very best that they have embodied, and that the majority of our patterned behaviors, as painful as they are and as wounding as they are, then we receive wounds from other people, is because they have these core wounded beliefs about themselves, and that that brings out narcissistic tendencies, and very, very selfish behaviors that really hurt other people and hurt ourselves. And it all begins with the self. And so we have to start learning how to have empathy with ourselves. The scariest, most difficult thing that I think exists in the healing process is recovering your wholeness. That's what it means to be healed, is to understand that we have this innate wholeness and that we've just simply been separated from that through our woundings, but that it was always there all along. And then we have to start being very gentle with ourselves. So empathy work is like, do hard things, but don't be hard on yourself. And that's a practice. That's a thing that takes embodiment. It takes community to do that. It takes coaching and mentorship. And an easy way to do that is to do rituals or ceremonies that are a safe environment to allow the emotions to come up and surface, and that your vulnerabilities will not be weaponized. So this could be like cold plunges, mindful cold plunges, sweat lodges, holotropic breathwork ceremonies. There's an endless amount. And then the emotional intelligence is understanding, really having a deep understanding of our emotions and how our emotions are messengers about all of this stuff. And then wisdom starts to come in. And when wisdom comes in, we have inner peace, we have emotional safety, we have sovereign wholeness. Remember, sovereignty is the ability to walk alone together. So it requires these two things that feel like they are diametrically opposed, and yet they're not. So that's a paradox, is to have sovereignty. And that requires wisdom and all this experience. And then you have emotional connection, like we've all wanted. And that is the process of knowing thyself. Now, there's two other steps that go into this. You have to have expanded consciousness experiences, which kind of come in like through ceremonies and some of the other things that were mentioned here, and predominantly in a safe community, even if that community is only like a couple people. And everyone needs to have this basic understanding of how this works. So what is Mustang Medicine about? It's about how to go through these 5 stages of discovering yourself. And let me know what questions you have, and we'll begin going through the rest of this workbook.